Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career playthrough. So yeah, we are in 1961, early March still. We have impacted the moon a couple times now, and we are working our way through those contracts. And yeah, so the world is kind of our oyster right now. We have all sorts of capabilities. We've got the 150-ton pad built, which is fantastic. It's fully operational now. We've got, let's see, what else do we have? We got the research and development facility is on its way to being upgraded. We got 400 more days on that. But we also have upwards of 300,000 funds. So let's look into spending some of those. All right, so we've got 35 points spent in our VAB, 29 in our research and development, and 8 in our spaceplane hangar, which I think is probably too many. Based on how much we're actually going to be using it. I'm really hoping that the X-15 that I'm building is kind of the last thing I have to build in the spaceplane hangar. But we'll see how that goes. I'll probably end up blowing it up a few times, so it's nice to be able to recycle them more quickly in that case. So yeah, we actually have 1 point available, probably from all the science that I've been doing. So let's go ahead and... let's see, how about 1, 2, 3... Yeah, we'll spend 1, 2, 3, 4 to get us 26 science per year in the research and development. That gives us 33 points. All right, and so for the rest, we really need to get the vehicle assembly building moving. So let's get us down to, I don't know, we'll leave ourselves a run budget of 66,000, I suppose. Only because we have some tooling and things coming up. Although, let's see, am I hoarding too much? Yeah, we've got hundreds of days before my next tooling event, so we should be able to earn ourselves some more funds. So let's be a little bold. Let's go down to 26, I think, is a safe margin. That gives us 11 points, and I basically want to plow all of this in the vehicle assembly building. That brings us all the way up to 46 points, which brings our build time of a Pioneer 3 on top of a Celis 2 rocket down to under 70 days. Probably closer to 75 for a brand new one. Yeah, 72 days for a brand new one of these. So yeah, that's making really good progress. Something that I've been looking into is when you want to upgrade your vehicle assembly building. And the answer that I got in very broad consensus from the RP-1 community is not yet. You really want to have a lot of points in your vehicle assembly building before you actually upgrade it. Because just like in the research and development, you get a 25% point, like straight production bonus, and you get a 25% production bonus in research and development for upgrading that facility as well, is what I was getting at. You also get in the VAB a second production line, so I could be building 2 rockets at once, which is super neat. But for now, that's something that we will deal with later on. I'm really pretty happy with just getting single rockets done in getting a rocket launch a little bit more than every 2 months as opposed to every like 3 or 4 or 5. Accelerating that pace dramatically is going to be what gets us back on track with maybe not catching up with history, but at least making good progress in that direction. And that also brought our research down to under a year for each of these big nodes. So we're down to 265 days for my next research, basic avionics and probes. You'll see I've done some moving of things around. No need to stress about what those are quite yet. We will talk about them in great detail later on. Alright, so we are here editing our Pioneer 3 rocket. I wanted to just kind of make sure I've made a couple of updates and show you a little bit of design changes that I have done. So you'll see that I'm finally using the GCRC solid rocket booster as an upper stage up here, which is a fantastic engine. It gets us about 3,800 meters per second of delta V, which is 600 fewer than the Space B I was using before, but as we've seen in the last couple episodes, that's not a bad thing at all. It's actually better to have fewer delta V and closer to exactly what you need for your particular mission, so that you don't wind up needing to burn off a whole bunch of extra fuel and make really weird trajectories and that sort of thing. So that is step one, is making sure we have the GCRC on here for our future lunar missions. Other things that I wanted to mess with is I had at one point the primitive solar panel technology coming up that was going to give me the next size up of the static solar panels, but I forgot that RO solar was a thing. So these are procedural, and I had it in my head that they were more expensive per square meter than the static ones, and so I was only using the static ones. But the reason that they were more expensive than the static ones is because I had them bigger and didn't really realize that it showed you the area right here. So yeah, it's actually very easy to make a solar panel that better fits your mission profile, and you don't need to wait for very particular static technology. So yeah, if you get solar panels of the exact same size, like this is a static tiny solar panel, and it's 0.05 meters squared in area, and it outputs 3.24 watts. And if I put this on here, it's a 0.05 meters squared is 3.2 watts. So yeah, it's exactly the same. And this actually costs a tiny bit less for some reason. Like these tiny static solar panels cost 60. So yeah, you might as well use the RO solar panels and not the static models, which means we can deprioritize the technology upgrade of getting those better solar panels because we have these that we can expand at will. And so we shall. Something that I'd like to do is bring these up to about... Yeah, I'm going to bring them up to 0.2 square meters, so 0.5 by 0.4, which is going to increase the cost by 60 funds a piece, but it's going to dramatically increase the amount of power that each one can collect. Let's go ahead and put these on the GCRC, because they are bigger. They're not going to fit up here anymore. Well, it's not terrible. It's not great, but that would almost work. Actually, yeah, I don't hate that. I think that expands the size of my fairing a little bit though, which is not great. So let's just do this. We'll put this down here, and that's just going to be fine. So yeah, that gives us a little more power, so we can put it back to estimated output in sunlight. And if we turn off, and if we pop this off of the rest of the rocket, you can see that this probe by itself is going to last forever with the experiments that it has on, even at the estimated solar panel output with it facing into the sun, not all the way into the sunlight, like not assuming every single panel is going to get charged, but this is like the actual possible capability of these solar panels, which is great. So that's awesome. That's going to help us to make probes that last a lot longer and are able to be a lot more capable. The other thing that I want to do is kind of keep in mind that I have done a lot of these experiments and I no longer need them. So there's some experiments that I've done that I don't need, like I'm 100% certain I don't need my thermometer and barometer anymore for specifically for the lunar impact mission. If I was able to get something in orbit, that would be a very different question. But if you filter down to your current vessel using the Kerbalism Science Archive, you can see, like, let's go down to temperature scan. Gives me a little weird thing there. And then you can see that we've done space high, and we have a teeny tiny fragment of space low science, because, you know, every time that something has come into low orbit around the moon, it has been screaming towards the surface at 3 kilometers per second. So yeah, there's no real likelihood that we're going to get space low with this mission profile, so don't bring the experiment. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. Same thing with the barometer, so we can throw those away. Okay, so that's 2 experiments down. Cosmic ray science, we have acquired some space low, space high, so let's keep doing that. That's the radiation scan. Mass spectrometry, we've actually finished space high, so we could probably leave that one off. So let's go into our Kerbalism config, and we are just going to turn off the mass spectrometer. Very cool. And so that's it, basically. Supersonic flight analysis and telemetry come with the probe. There's nothing you can do about those. So yeah, that's all the science that we have equipped, and that means that we are using barely any power. So I think that means that we have some room for more science. So let's see, we've got micrometeorite, which does not show up. It does show up here. Yeah, this takes 0 power whatsoever. Cosmic ray science does take some power, but that's fine. You can see here it takes 0.36 electric charge per hour, which is not very much at all. So the other ones are early TV camera and magnetometer. So I think magnetometer is probably... Oop, that's a little too heavy. Yeah, if we look at this, the magnetometer experiment, that adds 15 kilograms, and that brings us over our weight budget because that drops our delta V down to 3123, which might get to the moon. Like, might, but I'm really not confident that it is, because I think you need about 32. So that would be cutting it a little too close for my liking. So let's see, what else do we have? The only other one is early TV camera, which would be a very cool one to do. It has a space high science that I don't think we've done. Yeah, we have not done space high around Earth at all, and we also haven't done it around the moon. So we would get at least 2 of those science experiments, which would be lovely, lovely. The only trick is that it's pretty power hungry relative to the other experiments that we have. So let's see what that looks like if we turn this on. Yeah, you see that we were at 0.045 per minute in our power usage. If we turn this on, it brings us up to 0.345, which is pretty hefty. So we'd have to be careful with our power usage. But yeah, I think with delta V that works out fine, and with power that works out fine because we're using our larger solar panels. So that is a nice upgrade to the Pioneer 3 mission. So let's go ahead and snap this back together. Make sure our staging has not been borked. All right, fabulous. So we are going to lose a little bit of time on this build. It's going to make it more expensive fairly dramatically because there's bigger solar panels and a different set of experiments on here. So yeah, we're going to have to go back in time a couple days on our build. We've lost about 5%, but that's not a big deal. All right, so one of the big reasons we want to really crank up our VAB rate is so that we can throw out many, many more satellites, because we are running awfully low on lunar, easy lunar missions. We are going to need to get some technology before I'm able to get us into a good lunar orbit. I'm pretty sure there's a way for me to do that with avionics, battery trickery, and baby sergeants, but barring that, I think that we're probably going to wait a little while on lunar orbit until I get those upper stage thrusters, which is going to be about 300 days or so. So in the meantime, there's a bunch of different types of contracts. So we've worked out a couple of the contracts out of early satellites, but there's still a couple left over, and it unlocks different categories like the weather satellite contracts and navigational satellite contracts. One thing that I'm noticing is that a lot of these are repeatable to a degree. Like this early weather satellite, you can complete up to 6 times. And you actually need to do that, is the thing that I'm noticing now. So you see, you can do this up to 6 times. If you do it 3 times, then you can do a second generation weather satellite, so long as you've also done your first sun synchronous orbit satellite, which is another early sat. So yeah, there's a lot of unlocks and progression here for doing repeated things repeatedly that I did not quite realize. So yeah, we could do this a couple times to get that to get the weather satellite tech moving. Navigational satellites has a similar progression where this can be done up to 4 times. This is early navigational satellites. You do it 4 times and then you can start building an operational navigation system, which I imagine will be harder and have better rewards. One of the best ways to make money for just throwing satellites up is commercial satellites, which you unlock after doing some more complicated things like communications test satellites, which are a little bit dicier, and I'd like to get a better rocket before I'm able to do. But yeah, so we can unlock things that give us better contracts, because the payloads, because the payouts right now don't look great, but we're getting there. So we've already made some progress on navigation satellites, and I've talked a little bit about those. So let's do a couple more of these. We could do... Yeah, so let's just start off with early navigation satellites. One other thing, as I'm putting this together, is navsats are actually going to be the easiest thing to put up, for a reason that was really hard for me to determine. And it's because navsat payload is less dense for the exact same number of units than any of the other types of payload. It's lighter even than sounding rocket payload. So for 71.8872 units of navsat payload, this craft is 30 kilograms. For the same amount of weathersat payload, 71.9, it is 79 kilograms, so that's dramatically heavier. And as I remember it, ComSat payload is exactly the same density. So yeah, that alone makes it a little bit harder to do these contracts for ComSats and weathersats compared to navsats. So navsat seems to be the right place to start. So for this mission, we need just 60 kilograms, and because we are not going to tool this modular service module, I can just get it down as small as possible and then shave down to the exact amount that we need, and there we have it. So I think we're on Navstar C or something like that anyways. I don't think it's that important. Another thing that I've spent a little time on is trying to figure out what the heck my payloads to orbit are, and a lot of that is just trial and error. There doesn't seem to be any really easy way to make that happen. Yeah, so doing that and making them sub-assemblies makes it very easy to grab them and use them for things. I've been trying to use Kerbal launch vehicles, but I haven't been able to get it to, like, when I try to edit vehicles using this mod, it doesn't. Like, it will update the name and the configuration, but it won't update the actual parts that were used, which makes it not super useful for me. There's ways that I could work around that, but with how few things I have, I don't really feel the need to mess with that yet. But that means that I can just click on Thor Able here, and there we go. We have a Thor Able. There we go. We're done. Whoa! What in the heck was that? That was spooky. My rocket was possessed by the Kraken for a second there, but I guess we're okay. So yeah, now we are all set, and we have tons of Delta V, and I'm very confident this will be able to succeed on this mission to put this navigation satellite in orbit, which we will get done in just 71 days. Oops, nope. See? Check your staging. See, we had the launch clamp in the wrong stage, which was my bad, and there we go. Now we are all set. There's ways to make that even easier. Like, if you set empty stages, I think it can kind of like slot in so it doesn't mess things up, but on your sub-assemblies, that is. But I haven't gone that far yet. This is already a lot less work creating these rockets than I'm used to, so pretty stoked about that. But yeah, double checking tooling. Looks like the fairings need tooling. That would actually save us a fair amount, now that I'm thinking about this. It's going to cost me 5,000 funds to tool this. We are going to get a small percentage, plus or minus the amount that we are tooling now, that will also be considered tooled. And it's going to save us 200 funds on the vessel cost. And it's not so much the, like, saving 200 funds. I'm going to do this, like, what would that be? 25. I'm not going to launch 25 of these with this exact configuration, but the amount of time it could save me might be worth it. So let's just see what that would look like if I did. Okay, well, that saved me 2 days, so maybe that was not really worth it. But that's the idea of the thinking that goes into that. I'm planning on launching this exact same mission at least 3 more times after this one, and there may be launch failures and such such things as that. So stuff to consider. Shaving off a couple of days here and there makes a big difference over time as we are trying to get back on track. All right, and that gives us enough money to spend another point. And yeah, so let's just keep doing that. Let's go eeny, meeny, miny, R&D. We really want to get both going up, not necessarily an exact parallel, but something close to it, so that we we want rockets and we want research and everything just moving forward fabulously. All right, even though our 150-ton pad is complete, there's no reason not to send this to our 60-ton pad, so let's do that. That does save us a lot on cost and time to roll out. All right. Looks like we've got a fairly fortuitous launch window coming up for the moon. We are actually going to launch during the day. Pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, so we have here Pioneer 3 on the pad, ready to head out and do my final impact of the moon. Well, that's not true. It's probably... Whoa, that was a bit of a wobble. Love that. Feel like that's new. Maybe I need another update to my install. Anyways, 3 seconds until the launch of probably not my actual last impact of the moon. And release, and we are off. Because I'm almost certainly going to smash things into the moon accidentally. I probably won't be doing it on purpose, but yeah, this is not the last time something is going to hit the moon. So yeah, now we have going on up a very normal Pioneer 3 rocket with basically the same old. So yeah, there's a little bit of redundancy as far as that's concerned. Like, I was looking at the contracts and like it wants me to do 4 nav sats and 6 weather sats, and then you unlock the next level, and then you can do 4 to 6 of those a piece. So at a certain point, I'll probably stop showing you some of those, just like I did with the rocket plane contracts, where they ended up looking very similar over time. I'll always rope you guys in when interesting things happen and when cool milestones are hit. I try to always be recording while I'm playing this, although sometimes I do spend hours tinkering with designs without pressing the record button and all that. So yeah, anyways, not much more to say about this one in particular, so I will see you all in orbit. All right, 3, 2, 1, Miko. And we are now in our coast phase, and we are plenty high up in the atmosphere to go ahead and stage off. I should really get a separation booster on this thing. Just because the lazy drifting out is, you know, very economical, but a little silly. All right, 5 seconds until the AJ-1042 is ignited and fails to do so. Fantastic. Big sigh. Although, heck, why not? We still need to test. This is the first flight of my GCRC upper stage, so there's no reason whatsoever not to fire this one off. 3, 2, 1. Kaboom! And there it goes. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. Alright, yeah, so this is the first flight of my Pioneer 3 payload. We're going to rename this something else. Let's see. We'll call it 3F for failure. There you can see how solids don't just cut off in RP-1. They peter out slowly, and there's a pretty steep thrust curve. So yeah, we got into a really nice orbit just with the S3D booster and then the GCRC up on top, which is kind of an interesting fact. I don't know what to do with that information. Maybe I could make a smaller booster with those two. Even smaller than the Thor Able, but I'm not sure we could get it down below 20 tons. Definitely not with the S3D. But anyways, not super important, but this is a good, this will be a good satellite that provides us with data Yeah, because this still has visible imaging and micrometeorite and cosmic ray science. So I think all of that's done in low Earth orbit, but who knows? Maybe it'll catch a little something. All right, we have ignition and liftoff of Pioneer 3B. I guess I should actually rename it 3B just for, yeah, we'll call this the 3B since this is in fact my second attempt. Anyways, yeah, so this is the exact same thing as last time, which is the same as one before that. Now we just once again have to pin all of our hopes on the AJ-1042 not failing, which is, as it turns out, not the best bet we could possibly make. All right, Miko, and we are coasting up to our apoapsis so that we can send ourselves off into a good orbit and hopefully get to the moon. So, fingers crossed that the AJ-10 is cooperative this time. 3, 2, 1... And we are ullaging, and off we go. Hey, looks like we have a successful ignition of the AJ-1042. Fabulous. One thing, I think I might have mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Every time you get a failure on a launch, or on an ignition, you get a big boost of points. So anytime you get it, well, not just on failure on ignition, but if you get a failure on your engine, you get a big boost of test flight points, or test light points, I suppose I should say. Which is really helpful in making your rockets not fail quite so much. So even if you run your rocket to failure, that is worth doing even if you otherwise would be failing your mission. Like when I was testing my GCRC, it didn't fail on me, or we didn't have any problems, but that 5% failure rate went down to 3.3, which is not so bad at all. All right, so we have another minute or so of this burn. Hopefully nothing terrible happens. Another 25 seconds to go, and I hope it doesn't prove me wrong at the last second here, but I love when, like, you get to that point when you have a rocket built, or you have a stage built, or something, and it just works like the way that you intended, and it just does what you want, and it works cleanly, and that just feels so great. Like, that's one of my favorite things about Kerbal Space Program, is being able to design really interesting contraptions that do stuff, right? Like, you're building this whole machine that is designed to perform these particular orbital maneuvers, and when it works, it feels fantastic. So it's a very satisfying thing, building something that I think looks pretty cool and is actually also very functional. All right, so it's time to get us to the moon. Let's see, we're gonna be coming around this way. My control is locked, so I guess once again we are waiting until we have we are not over the ocean. There we go. And let's see. Unfortunately, it was probably right around here that I wanted to make this maneuver. So as I've mentioned, it's not just that we need to make a node that is failure proof, or you want it to be as failure proof as possible, of course. But in addition to that, you also want to use all of your delta V. So let's see, 3443 update. That's pretty good. Want to shift that forward quite a bit. Yeah, so that is doable, but I think we can get away if we go down to like 3200 and then add some radial to it. That gets it to that point where it was doing like before, where it had like a whole bunch of wiggle room on both sides. Let's see, 1200 maybe? It's 3447, 3436, 3411. 3442.9. Fabulous. Okay. Now there we go. That looks pretty darn solid. Solid. Because it's a solid rocket booster, get it? All right, anyways. All right, just 20 seconds to go, so let's start spinning this up so that we can hopefully get a good translunar injection with our GCRC solid rocket motor. Just 5 more seconds until we are ready to fly. 3, 2, 1. Throttle up and off we go. So now let's go over to the map and see how we do. All right, so that's the nice thing about the GCRC is it has a very high thrust to weight ratio. It burns pretty hard and then it cuts out relatively fast, but the trouble that I've had with it is it also has a very long tail. Like all solid rocket motors, it doesn't burn its fuel all that cleanly. Ooh, we are almost there, and stop. There we go, perfect. So that worked out great. But yeah, like you saw, it kind of slowly tapers down that thrust down to 0 as the last grains of solid fuel are burned out. But that's all we needed. We are there. We have a perfect orbit that will intercept the moon and smash directly into it. Other thing to check out, we can not care about the probe being the upper stage, Able. There's probably a way to, I'm sure there's a way to make it so that those don't actually show up and bother me about being, low on electric charge or whatever. But I haven't figured it out quite yet. It's just something that I'll have to go in and probably just flip a little switch that's in the VAB. But yeah, so we've got our automation set up for power on this, so we are just going to fly out and get science and not worry about the battery or supply on this, and we will see how that works in orbit of the moon. And we got some visible imaging credit for Space High, which we definitely did not have before, and we are making it all the way out to the moon with no problem whatsoever. It's very nice. We are in a very good configuration such that we are able to have plenty of solar power. We're actually pretty well oriented to get power from the sun as we are flying in towards the moon. I love that we can see the planets in there. It's probably, I couldn't actually tell you exactly which ones those are, but we got 2 planets that are occluding the sun, giving us good sunlight on the face of the moon that we are going to be able to see as we come in. And speaking of the sun, I actually fixed that, so you'll definitely have noticed that it looked really atrocious in my previous in my previous episodes, because there's an issue with Scatterer and having procedural parts as the root node of your craft, which I almost always do, in that it makes the sun flare disappear, which is not super great. So I've replaced that with Galileo's sun flare that does not require Scatterer, and that seems to be working just fine. All right, so we are getting very, very close. So now I need to just make 100% sure that we have enough power. We are 50 kilograms, which is good for that part of the lunar impactor. We need to make sure we have power, and we are traveling fast enough, which I think all of those things will be true by the time we get down there. Although we are coming down a little bit slower than we have been in previous missions. Even so, I'm not terribly worried about it for this one. We should speed up quite a bit as we get close. All right, the slow approach of the moon, and I'm actually... Wow, are we not going to be going fast enough by the time we get there? Holy crap. Okay, I guess I did need a bigger stage. Because we are 20 minutes out and we are going almost 2,200 meters per second, but that's not 2,450. Oh, come on. Okay, no, we're totally fine. Yeah, that accelerates fairly quickly, thanks gravity. Whoa! Big camera movement on there as we get into the low situation on orbit. So yeah, here we go. We are impacting very quickly now. We have just about 5 minutes out, and you can just see the full disk of the moon taking up all of our vision. And we could actually, it's actually really nice that this is a sunny day on the moon right now, because we did include a visible imaging camera on this. So yeah, we should be able to get some good science out of that. All right, 2 minutes as we approach the surface of the moon. 1 minute 20. 1 minute. Oh, and then you could see when the low textures loaded in there. All right, but we're starting to see all the surface features, the crags, the different things that we're going to be trying to land on not too far from now, I think. Basically, the Soviets and the U.S. space program set their eyes on the moon almost immediately after reaching orbit, and I think that is the right move. And so here we go, our Pioneer 3 signing off. Kaboom! Fabulous. Lunar Impactor has been... contract has been completed. All right, Lunar Impactor contract complete. 15 more science, which got us a KCT point, I saw. A whole bunch more funds, whole bunch more reputation. Fantastic. That puts us in a great position to move forward. One thing that I have to do, unfortunately, is I picked up this X-Planes High contract thinking I was going to be able to get it with my Karman line, but it's going to expire in just 60 days, which is... I don't have time. So I'm going to have to cancel that one and re-accept it when it's time. So I'm just going to do that now and take the funding hit while I have the money, because I would very much like to spend some of that money. Let's do that now. Yet more. This is going to be a very familiar thing. We're doing contracts. We are spending money on the upgrades. Bring it back down to like 43,000. I think we'll leave it at. And let's get 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are up to 50 points in the vehicle assembly building. And we'll do 1 more point in the VAB. And then split the difference on the last 2. 1 more in the R&D, 1 more in the vehicle assembly building. So we were at 51 points in the VAB, 36 points in R&D, and the 8 points in the spaceplane hangar, which are a sunk cost. So yeah, this starts moving pretty fast. Like, you start getting a lot of points and you start really investing in your space program. We are at 0.85 build points per second, which I think is going to make it so we are cranking out rockets really quickly, which is fantastic. Alrighty, so poking through our contracts, I don't want to neglect these early satellite contracts because I believe that they act as kind of a gateway that leads you down the more specific paths. Like, we had the first communications satellite and atmospheric analysis satellite, and that opened up weather sats, navigational sats, and I'm sure communication sats are in here somewhere, but yeah, those two. And they're kind of stacked in the early satellite contracts, but I'm sure that there's their own thing that either will be coming or here we go, they're stuffed into advanced satellite contracts. Very exciting. So anyways, we have a bunch of different paths that we want to take, so we want to make sure that I'm knocking out these firsts. Sun synchronous is something that I can do pretty easily, and I will be doing very soon, but I already accepted the contract for a early navigation satellite and an early weather satellite. So I'm going to be kind of alternating my way through these. I can basically do everything with the Thor Able rocket. So yeah, I'll be launching just a ton of those because it is a very capable sub 60 ton launcher. And we're kind of just whiling away the time until we make some further technology upgrades. So I think I'm a little bit behind on my technology progress. I should probably start spending points on that rather than the vehicle assembly building now that I've dumped in a ton of new points, because we're still taking 200 days, 243 days for one of these nodes, but we're able to crank out a Thor Able in 64 days, which is really cool. I love being able to launch once every 2 months. So yeah, we're working on that. We'll upgrade our tech as we go forward. And nice thing to know is we have a bunch of money. Now that we're kind of cranking through small contracts that are not quite so life or death, I can accept a bunch and then knock them out and then keep on moving, which is going to let us, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 points. I don't see any reason why not. And let's just put that all into R&D, put my money where my mouth is. So yeah, that shortens up the time. I'd really like to get everything moving. There's a balance to be struck because there are certain walls, you know, like there's going to be a wall that I hit when I can't get more than 25 science per node, which is coming up very soon, but I also have the upgrade of the building coming up, so it's not that big of a deal. But there's another one not too much further here at 50 55. Yeah, so there's the next building level is going to let us get all the way up to here, which is 1964 technology. Gosh, I'm going to be way behind. But yeah, after this point, we're going to need to once again upgrade the research and development building to be able to go past it. But until then, we have plenty of nodes to unlock, and we actually have gotten a little bit of science in from some of the payloads that I've put up. That's the nice thing about Kerbalism. You just like turn around and then all of a sudden you have a little extra science in your pocket that you didn't realize was there. So I think we're going to pick up 1959 orbital rocketry, better late than never, just to kind of keep that progression moving. I think because we already have early flight control and entry, descent, and landing coming, that's got us in a pretty good place. We're going to want to start thinking about human-rated EDL to get us towards capsules pretty soon. There's also some blue sky nodes that are going to be pretty important. Like there's actually a new service module type upgrade here, which I don't know much about, so I can't be too excited yet, but there should be some pretty good stuff. And then this is just a electronics blue sky node with no technology or no parts inside, just a new crew science for us to get to eventually. But that unlocks a bunch of actual part nodes to do additional science, to do more avionics, to get better communications, etc., etc. So we're coming close to that wall at 25 points, which if we didn't have the building upgrade coming, this would be the end of our technology tree until we unlock it. So yeah, things to look forward to, especially now that we're starting to put up satellites that have good science payloads. All right, on the pad, Navstar D, engaging autopilot and launching. We have ignition and liftoff of yet another Thor-able rocket, which, based on your guys' comments, I am going to actually call a Thor-able. I really like the idea of, if I'm actually recreating, I don't know why this thing spun around like that, but that's probably fine. If I'm actually recreating an existing real rocket, then it's fine to actually use that name. So we're going to call this Thor-able and not Celis, because this is absolutely just a Thor-able. I've done everything I could, right down to finding what paint jobs would work the closest to make this look actually like the Thor-able rocket, which I'll generally try to do. I'm not sure how much more we're going to be doing that going forward, but really we'll just kind of see based on what rockets we have available to us. When I have rockets that don't look anything like real rockets, like the Atlas monstrosity that I have built, I'm going to come up with my own name for it. So yeah, we'll just deal with that. But yeah, so our Thor-able is a venerable system at this point. We're getting up to a point where it is very reliable, and less than 1 in 20 is failing at this point. So I'm very hopeful that that remains the case. That's definitely the case for my S3D. The AJ-10 is still up at a 6% failure rate, but that's getting better over time, and because we've just tagged the next node of orbital rocketry, hopefully that will get even better in the future. So yeah, I will see you guys once we are in orbit with the Navstar D, and I'll tell you all about the payload. 4 seconds to MECO on our S3D engine, and main engine cut off, and we have released. Just let go. Come on out of there. Okay, next revision on this thing, I'm putting on separation motors. Oh no! Ignition failure on an AJ-1042, the darn thing! Alright, well, that is a failure of our Navstar D, so I guess we are just going to have to launch it again. There's been a lot of that with these darn things. Alright, exciting times. We have finished the unlock of basic avionics and probes, which is very exciting. That gives us a procedural probe core that I hear does not quite work, so we may avoid it. Some avionics packages, but most importantly, There's another lovely procedural avionics upgrade that once again reduces the amount of power it uses and the amount of mass by a huge factor, especially for those science cores. Very exciting for those lunar missions we've been on. But more importantly, which was pointed out to me, are the deep space avionics, which I didn't realize were a thing. So near Earth avionics are what we had so far, and those are actually hard limited to only work near Earth. So if I actually had tried to caveman a lunar orbiter at this stage, I'm not sure that the control would have worked out at the range of the moon. So that tells you that there's been some pretty significant advances that this technology represents. The ability to control to create and miniaturize computers and then control them from a distance. The trick with deep space avionics, not only do they literally let you have avionics in space, which seems fairly obvious, deep space avionics also allows you to turn on and turn off your avionics. So the way that it works is that you can turn them on and then they'll consume power like an avionics core, so pretty high power consumption as we've determined. But then you can flip them off and they'll just go into science mode, like a passive mode, where you can just put it into run state and leave it there. And that's so great. I didn't know that was a thing. That's really exciting, and that is going to really open up our mission capabilities. I'm not going to go into a big design phase quite yet because we need one more thing to really make this make the most of this upgrade, and that is early flight control. So early flight control is going to give us the tiny thrusters that we need to make upper stages, and with deep space avionics as well as that the rest of those upgrades, we are going to be able to make tiny controllable probes that are able to do all sorts of things, and that is going to open up a lot of missions that can't be handled by just an able stage put into an almost orbit. All right, so once again we are just about out of funds, so I am going to just go ahead and grab the first sun synchronous orbit satellite because I think that's very doable with the technology we have, and I just wanted to grab contracts as late as possible because everything has deadlines now, so I don't want to grab stuff before I think I'm going to be ready to do them. So that gives us the funds that we need to finish rolling out the Navstar D, but before that finishes, we are actually going to be finished mounting to our air launch vehicle, an X-15. All right, just dropping from the vehicle, we have my version of the X-15, which had an engine failure. Shoot. Well, it failed right in the center. Maybe it'll... Oh, okay, there we go. Thank goodness for additional ignition. So yeah, we were able to use a second ignition and get that one to light after all. But yeah, this is my take on the X-15. I've built this one from scratch based on some designs that I saw in the Discord, but I didn't actually load any craft files. I built this thing all by myself, which means it's probably going to fail catastrophically in some way. I've designed it based on, like I said, on the look of the X-15. So we have kind of the long fuselage, and we're just kind of nosing up to 45 degrees for the best ascent. It has kind of that long fuselage, and the black paint looked a lot blacker inside the spaceplane hangar. But we have a lot of just like these stubby little wings, kind of like the real X-15 did. I think the X-15 had kind of smaller wings now that I'm looking at this thing in flight. But yeah, they're a little bit further forward to try to keep the center of mass just in front of the center of lift. And yeah, got the little small wings on the back. We don't have the gigantic underside vertical stabilizer, and the one on top is a lot smaller as well because I'm not sure how necessary all that is. I've flown this a couple times in simulations and it's worked out okay. You notice I have wheels on it. I use the wheels primarily to do that testing that I mentioned. But we have on here a bunch of particularly tuned RCS thrusters, the conformal attitude jets that are not supposed to burn up quite so badly. But yeah, so we are leveling out just a little bit, just, well, less leveling out, more just kind of falling a little bit, to make sure that we get some horizontal velocity as well as vertical velocity, because we want to get over 100 kilometers. That will get us the Kármán line contract, but we also need to make sure that this thing does not disintegrate on re-entry, and that means we're going to want to spend more time at a shallow, in a shallow trajectory coming down. We don't want to go too far. All right, so we are pitching down as the tanks empty out, which is going to help us to fly back in. And it looks like we have managed a 114 kilometer apoapsis. So yeah, this thing uses HTP, which is in a big tank up front to help keep the mass forward on this plane. That gives us a pretty good and strong RCS. But yeah, here we are flying forward on the first flight of our X-15. We have just peaked past 100 kilometers, which means we have gotten a crude speed record of 2,000 meters per second. I guess that must be surface velocity, which gets us some good money. That's good. 80 kilometer altitude record, 90 kilometer altitude record, 100 kilometer altitude record. Fantastic. The trick is now with the X-Planes High and the Kármán line contract, we need to get home safely to actually deem those properly completed, and we can see the space center below. All right, so I'm pretty hopeful that this is going to work out properly. Now there's really nothing else to do except for see how this thing interacts with the atmosphere on the way back down. In my tests, it's been fine, but this is actually a live flight for Johnny Flores. All right, at 75 kilometers, we are starting to get into the part of the atmosphere that actually is thick enough to slow us down, so we are attempting to use the RCS jets to hold attitude. I encourage you not to be as frightened of this as I was the first couple times, but this is going to nose down about 20 or 30 degrees and then fly at this attitude. And in previous testing, this has worked out where it has come through this harrowing re-entry and has been fine. All right, screaming into the atmosphere at upwards of 2,000 meters per second. 30 kilometers, 26 kilometers, we are descending rapidly, but we are also slowing down rapidly. Trying to keep the G-forces below, what is that, like 5 or 6? Yeah, we don't want to go too high. But yeah, we are slowing down pretty nicely as we are reducing in altitude. And because we are using the actual spaceplane parts and conformal attitude jets, everything on here is rated for this type of activity. And so I've found that so long as I don't try to like flip a 180-degree turn right now at this speed, we'll be fine. We should, we're slowing down. We're pretty much out of the danger zone at this point. So let's slowly begin to turn around. Alright, so with all the jets that I've put on this thing, it is very nimble. I'm sure it's a pretty bad design as far as these things are actually concerned, but yeah, I actually really enjoy the way this thing flies and the way this thing handles, and yeah, so long as it doesn't like drop onto its face on the way down, this thing should get us, get Johnny Flores home perfectly safely and nail us these 2 contracts. So let's just see. Let's skip this glide for you all, but I'll let you know how close we get back to the Space Center. All right, so we have just about finished our glide. This thing just flew perfectly. I really could not be happier with how this thing has turned out. So you see I've got nav HUD flipped on so I can kind of try to line this up. I think I'm going to get us lined up over the runway and then pitch up and try to pop the chute. So we'll do that. There we go. And now let's see how I did as far as lining up the parachute as this comes down. Oh, that's not great. Oh no, okay. Alright, maybe stabilize? Oh man, that's not good. Okay. Maybe 2 parachutes next time. Boop, boop. But look at how tough those materials are. Oh my gosh, that was harrowing at the end there, but this thing landed. I didn't blow up any engines. I didn't break off any pieces. I'm so happy with how this thing flew. This is awesome. And that gives us X-Planes High completed, which you'll notice, if I can get it back up again, has a really high reward. They've actually changed this in the latest RP-1 Master to be like that incremental percentage thing so that it actually increases the reward over time instead of just being spammable. And we've also completed past the Kármán line. The first person has officially reached space. Well done, Johnny Flores. With the completion of the Past the Kármán line contract, we now have access to suborbital flights, which we can do. So this is telling us that we can't do X-Planes High and suborbital flights at the same time. Like, you can't double dip on the contracts, guys. Which makes perfect sense. But yeah, so this gives us a good reason to keep flying our X-15. I'm not 100% sure that we are actually going to get... I'm not 100% sure we could get 180 kilometers. I think that might be worth a try. That would require a better or a much steeper trajectory based on the 3 engines that I have on my X-15. But we also have access to... Oh, these are shared now. Yeah, so you see now these contracts are actually shared. So this X-Planes High and X-Planes High Difficult are on the same contract reward curve. So it's going to be a while before this is actually worth anything. But we could, in theory, do this one where we reach 345 to 545 meters per second for 3 minutes. That's not a super large reward, but I guess there's no reason not to do that, just to keep flying. So yeah, now we're just kind of waiting for... that was basically the only reason we hired Johnny Flores, was to pass the Kármán line, because we are a ways off yet from orbital flight. We can definitely make attempts at the suborbital flight, but that may or may not work based on the engines that we have attached to our X-15. So that may be something we do in the future. All right, so as you may have noticed is the process now. Now that we are really knocking out these contracts, we are making a ton of money. So let's just keep funneling in points. Yeah, that's 17,000 seems like a good amount. We have 2 rockets under construction, and the X-15 is recovering to the hangar. So I think we are in a great shape to just kind of invest everything we can. Do not hoard your funds. So yeah, I don't know why not to just keep cranking away at that. Let's also do a little bit. There we go. So we're at 54 points in the vehicle assembly building, 45 points in research and development. Yeah, we are moving really fast now. That's great. That is accelerating rapidly and finally getting to a place where I'm pretty happy with it. Of course, that also means that we need to as well be, getting science points. So that's one of the things that these new satellites are intended to do. So we'll go over the design and flight of those a little bit further in the future. We're going to have to end it here for now. It's always so hard to cut these episodes off. It feels like there's so much to do. I get so excited about playing that I want to just keep rolling. But I think an hour is probably plenty. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.